not negotiating your divorce, you're renegotiating your future. Come and meet with Hilary Heninger, Victoria, myself on The Local Connection, because you're gonna learn how you can really live your life after divorce. Stay tuned. Welcome to The Local Connection with the Giblin Gals, where we unravel the secrets of successful marketing with passion and purpose. I'm Jen, your guide through the dynamic world of business strategies.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Local Connection with the Giblin Gals. Thanks for tuning in. Last episode we had Jody and she was helping us with our mindset and our movement. If you missed it, make sure to check it out. Today we have Hilary and she is with Smart Girl Divorce Strategies. You are not negotiating your divorce, you are renegotiating your future. So thanks so much for being here with us, Hilary. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. You know what? It's so funny. I'm good, but when you said that, it just reminded me of like the process itself, how complicated it is, and how like truly overwhelming it can be. And I think sometimes that like little reframe, I know we'll get into it, but that reframe of like mindset shift, like you talked about mindset with Jody, on going from negotiating your divorce to renegotiating your future can really help reframe how you approach it.
Okay, so tell us how you got to that conclusion. I really want to understand, because most people see it as really adversarial and it's just an awful thing and we're gonna, go out in the parking lot and scream at each other. Tell me how you got the mindset change. Yeah, duking it out. Okay, so Victoria's gonna duke it out with somebody, not
So I
me.
was screaming in the parking lot. No, I'm just kidding. No, honestly though, you know what? There's really two areas that I think almost everybody struggles with. And like you say, the divorce process itself is incredibly challenging. And it really runs the gamut, the experience that people can have. But I think there are two areas that everybody struggles with. And one is the divorce process itself, and the other is rebuilding. And so for me, I had been married for 18 years. We had 3 kids. And I legitimately went into the divorce process thinking like, how hard can this be, right? Those are like famous last words in life. How hard can this be? And you think that there is you think that there is so much information and support out there, and then you get into this experience, and I was about a year into it, and bills are piling up, and I legitimately went from like effectively being a stay-at-home parent to overnight having to return to the workforce, parenting 3 kids full-time, no financial resources available to me, and really recognizing like the law protects what you can afford to pursue. And so I was in the thick of it, and I remember my partner at the time turning to me and saying, "Do you really think that they can get you across the finish line on this?" And he was kind of just reiterating what I was feeling and thinking, but I hadn't had the courage to kind of address. And hitting pause in your divorce process is one of the greatest gifts. And a lot of people get this forward momentum without realizing, like, if I actually stopped and reflected on where I need to go, whether or not I can actually get there, and whether or not this is the team to get me there, a lot of people would stop moving forward. And so it was in that moment that I set up a meeting with my lawyer for the following week, and I left that meeting thinking like, I'm not sure that they have any idea what we're doing, which is really quite an unnerving experience when your life is on the line, right? And so that was like the moment at which I realized advocacy is the absolute most important thing, hands down. And you can't outsource it. I always say, like, you can outsource your expertise or the expertise that you need, but you cannot outsource the advocacy. Nobody will advocate for the things that matter to you the most more than you. Nobody will care about your financial well-being more than you. Nobody will care about your kids more than you, right? Yeah, as a mom, you're like, nope, correct, right? And so, moment. But I think the reality is just that, right? And so you're not expected to know everything. Like, divorce is such a complex process. And so you can find the expertise that you need. You can information gather, but nobody is going to advocate for the things that matter the most to you more than you. And then the second part was rebuilding. Like, you get through the divorce process, and then all of a sudden you're like, so now I have to pick up all the pieces and figure it all out. And so how do you rebuild that confidence? How do you rebuild your career, particularly if you've been a stay-at-home parent for any period of time? And then how do you rebuild your finances? And so those are the 2 courses that I offer, is really the divorce process and the roadmap through that. And then the second one really is building blocks of rebuilding.
Now I have to ask, do you work with the law team? Do you support the client? Do you become part of are you the quarterback for that for them? or are you part of the team? How does that work for you?
Yeah, so it really depends on the divorce process. You know, some people come to me where they feel really confident with their lawyer, and I have a great lawyer after having some not so great lawyers. However, again, these are life lessons, right? And so I help everybody who maybe is trying to figure out how to find the right lawyer, because that is an art in and of itself. And then the other part of that is maybe they have a great lawyer. Maybe they feel really confident. So maybe they're just looking for emotional support, somebody to really, you know, we talked a little bit before we started filming about resonance, somebody who really resonates with their experience. There's nothing more empowering than seeing somebody who has not only been through it and can appreciate where you're coming from, but I think also has rebuilt, right? Because this is your future. This is where you're headed. You have to kind of figure out how you're going to pick up the pieces and figure this out post divorce. And so I come in at different stages depending on what you need and where you're at. I work with mediators. I have really great mediators who refer me to clients who they feel like they just need that additional piece of support, because lawyers and mediators can be great, but they're typically not the best person to equip you or support you emotionally through this, right? It's a really expensive version of support. And so find somebody who really can embody the things that you need, understands where you're coming from, and their primary role is to support in that. And so it really, you know, runs the gamut of whether or not they need support in finding legal advice, whether or not they're trying to vet their strategy, because strategy is so important, or whether they're just looking for additional kind of support through it from an emotional perspective.
Excellent.
I mean, I have never been married, so, you know, in terms of, I've heard of a lot of difficulties though with, yeah, they have no idea how hard this is going to be. So with someone, I guess, what are you finding in terms of like, is there an average amount of time that this process takes? Or is it just like, you know, different for every person?
I think it's so different, and that's what I think makes it really challenging, right? And so I built this roadmap through Divorce Course really to support anybody going through divorce, no matter whether it was, you know, high conflict, low conflict, whether there's high levels of amicability, or whether you legitimately can't even figure out how to, you know, manage your sports season with your co-parent and your kid. And so I think it really runs the gamut in terms of timeframes. What we do know from research, though, is that women are disproportionately financially impacted by divorce. And that comes down to, you know, financial well-being, rebuilding, home ownership, all sorts of capacities. So I think when we're talking about common experiences, I think it's hard to identify that everybody has a common experience, because everybody has a different starting point. You know, some people are already in the workforce, some people are having to return to the workforce. Some people go from being, you know, in a parenting household where they share parenting to all of a sudden being a single parent or a solo parent. So I don't think that there are necessarily commonalities in terms of how it looks. I think there are commonalities from an emotional standpoint on the grief, you know, the challenges of not knowing where to go and how to get through this process, the steps you might take. Because even though your divorce might look different, there are a lot of similarities in terms of the people you have to talk to, the information gathering, hitting that pause, like I said, and then rebuilding. Now, you might all be coming from a different starting point, but you're often all going to go through at some point in time or another similar steps through that. So I think it's just important to also recognize, like, you're not going to find resonance in everybody, right? There's like the goop-worthy people who are vacationing with their exes, and you're trying to figure out, like, how does one do that? Do I want to vacation with my ex?
No, that's
correct.
not my favorite
That
kind
is
of vacation.
I have a tremendous amount of admiration for people who can navigate it in that way. I really do. That didn't happen to be my experience. That does not appear to be in my future. And that's okay, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with, I think, defining success for what it looks like for you in navigating that divorce process, as well as the co-parenting journey. And success might look like, you know, being able to get to a place in which you don't have any conflict. For other people, it might be like getting to a place where you're literally buying matching pajamas with your, you know, ex's new partner. I don't know, right? Like, I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to tell you what it's supposed to look like, right? I know a lot of people who are like, pardon? What? Who am I buying matching
There's
pajamas?
a universe. Someone has that reality that they would like that. Yep.
Right, and we see this. We see this.
It's a
online.
Christmas card photo. Look.
100%. And so I think that if that's your definition of a success and that's what you're trying to strive for, I think it's really helpful to figure out what's your strategy to get there.
I think that's such a beautiful thing, and I feel like we're starting to accept now more so with the rates of divorce and things, because I feel like, I don't know if it was my age growing up or what have you, but I feel like so many people were like, well, we're gonna stay together even if we're unhappy. And I'm like, isn't it nicer to show a family for happy parents that provide safety and security and comfort to each other than two that are resenting each other, or maybe there's conflict, and that's not, you know what I mean? Like thinking about giving back to that family and how it may not be nuclear, but it's still beautiful.
I think what we know, even from like the research side of it, is that whether you have, you know, a two-parent household where you remain married or whether or not you get divorced, I think what we know from research is that kids do best when there's not conflict.
Yeah.
And so the idea that simply staying married is a measurement of success. The laughing says it, right? I mean, that's just not how we want to measure success in terms of raising kids in a home. And so you can have a home where two parents still exist under the same roof, and there's a lack of conflict, and you're able to model all of these things you value, and you also can have a home in which they operate in two separate households, and you still can model those things for one another. And so I think redefining what success looks like in terms of, you know, that either intact or sort of separated family, I think is really key.
So if we want to find you, because we want some help, what would we do?
You definitely want to find me, whether it's the roadmap or whether it's the rebuilding course, you want to find me. And so you can find me on Instagram at Smart Girls Divorce Strategy, and you can also find me on my website.
Thank you so much for coming. We could go for hours, honestly, on this topic. And I'm a
but-
happily married human. So
High school sweethearts over here.
There's still
very
so
cute.
much to better understand, because I think even applying some of your same strategies to make a happy household happier.
Happy future.
Would be great.
Yeah.
I think families need support no matter what. So
Absolutely.
I agree.
Thank you so much, Hilary. We're so excited that you came out to see us today. Up next, we are going to be the Jen and Victoria show on The Local Connection. We're going to talk to you about the next greatest marketing tip that you need to have for your business, so stay tuned. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Local Connection. Remember, implement those marketing gems and watch your business soar. I'm Jen, signing off with inspiration. Until next time.